Hey, how do you really write a book? This week on the podcast, I interview author Sarah Dressler. Sarah has written multiple novels, including Sweet Summertide, her most recent, that released in May of 2025. She's also written a nonfiction book called How to Really Write Your Book and Other Forms of Self Torture. I'm just getting into this one, but there's so much good stuff in here, especially if you're a new writer. I think you'll get a ton of value out of this book. We're going to talk a lot about her process, her journey as a writer, lessons she's learned along the way, and some advice she's got for new and aspiring writers as well. So, without further ado, let's get to it. My conversation with author Sarah Dressler.
So I think plotting for me is my best tool. So initially I have an idea. The idea will come to me usually in my sleep or in the shower. And then I write it on a chalkboard. That's my favorite way to do it because you can quickly erase a word, replace a word. And recently, the last couple books I wrote, I found that writing the synopsis first really helped me to write the outline later. So I write the blurb first, I write the synopsis next, and then I write the outline. So it's like building, like you write the blurb and then you build into the synopsis, and then you build that into a more detailed outline. And then that builds right into your story chapter by chapter, and you're done. You know exactly where you're going the whole time. There's no guesswork involved.
That's really cool. So, how long does it typically take you to do the blurb, synopsis, outline? And okay, now I'm ready to start writing. Like, how long does that initial setup take for you typically?
Gosh. So it varies. The last couple that I wrote were much quicker because I think I'm honing in on the technique that works best. But if I get the idea, I usually write the synopsis within a day or two of the initial idea and blurb. And then the outline can take a week or two. When I sit down to write though, it's probably like my ADHD brain or whatever, but like I sit down, I write, I tell everyone what I'm doing, and I don't talk to anyone for a month, but then I'm done. So that works for me, and my family's totally on board, which is very helpful.
That's super helpful. So, okay, so we talked a little bit about this earlier, but again, a big focus for me often is going to be mindset stuff. So, mental blocks or things that are keeping people from really progressing. I'm curious if that's something that you have ever wrestled with. If you could talk a little bit about that, and maybe even things that you still struggle with. Love to hear kind of your interaction with that, and maybe how you overcome some of those challenges, if that is something that you've dealt with.
Yeah, I mean, the mental blocks kind of come with that self-doubt, right? Like as writers, we're putting our hearts out into the world for everyone to judge, and it's really scary. And so I think that initially when you start writing, there's a lot of self-censorship that can happen because you're worried about what other people might think about what you're writing. And if you play it safe with your story, the readers are going to see right through that eventually. So to save yourself some time and trouble, just go for it. You can always cut things down. So be bold with your writing, be bold with your stories, use the bad word if it feels right in that sentence, like do the things that you feel are right in the moment when you're writing that first draft. And you can always tailor them and mold them later during the editing process. And I think that mindset going into it helps you not be afraid to write the hard stuff or the good stuff. So yeah, I think the self-censoring in the initial phases is probably the thing we could all get rid of.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. So you've talked a lot about one of the themes that's kind of come out as I've listened to you talk about your journey and your process. One of the big themes has been kind of the people around you and the support network that you have with your friends and your family, and even the friend who encouraged you early on. And I think that encouragement is such a critical piece for writers, because so many of us are going to have those moments where the self-doubt really does creep in, or we really start to feel like, this isn't going anywhere? Like, well, is anybody even ever going to read this? And those moments where someone says something or does something for you that kind of, they can really just spark your writing and kind of reinvigorate your confidence and all that. So I'm curious if you have any moments in your past that you can think of where someone said or did something that you would point to and say, man, that was a super encouraging thing, and it really helped me kind of keep going when maybe I wouldn't have otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, the last book that I wrote, I wanted to throw it in the trash when we were in our third round of edits. So I'm not going to throw my editor under the bus. She did have my best interest in mind, but of course there's moments where you want to quit and you're done with it because it's hard. It's the most vulnerable thing I think a person can do is to tell a story from their own creation. So yeah, my husband on this instance anyways, he was like, "You wrote a great story, so just stop it." Like, he had to just tell me to like just stop, just go do the edits. You're good, you're fine. So sometimes you just need someone to be real with you. On other occasions, and I think this is something that we don't do enough of or people are afraid to do, but on your social media, reach out to authors, even published big name authors, reach out to them directly. And I've done this dozens of times. Other authors are just like you and me. Like, we are just all in here trying to do our best to tell a story. Whether you've made millions of dollars or tens of dollars, like we all want each other's success. I believe that. Maybe not everybody, but maybe. So I think reach out to other authors. Say, "Hey, I'm writing this story. I'm really stuck. What do I do?" Authors want to help you. And so I think we don't utilize that tool enough to stay motivated, but they're our biggest resource. Other writers are our biggest resource. So I think don't be afraid to reach out to them. Most of them are sitting at home on their couch bored anyways, not knowing what to write. Like, we're all in the same boat.
Yeah, no, that's great. I love it. And I will say that since I kind of I wanted to write for a long time but never did, mostly because I just kind of thought, well, that's not the path that I chose, right? I chose to be a corporate employee and do that whole thing. So writing in my mind was something that, like, well, that's for writers and I'm not a writer. But once I became convinced that I can and I should, and started getting online and starting connecting with other authors, one of the things that I was super encouraged by early on was just how like welcoming and encouraging everyone is. Like, it is very rare that I've come across another author who, just doesn't give me the time of day or something like that. Most of the people I've connected with are super generous with their time, super generous with their advice. I've learned so much even just from doing this podcast. So I brought a lot of authors onto this show, and just asking people like you about their process and about some of the lessons they've learned has been super eye-opening and insightful for me. And so I can totally understand and resonate with what you're saying, that yeah, people want to connect, people want to share what they've learned. And I've seen people lately, even on threads and Instagram, say like, "Oh, I read this book. Should I reach out to the author and tell them I loved it?" And I'm like, "Yes, please. Like, we
Yes.
love hearing that stuff. Absolutely." So yeah, I think that's great. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about your nonfiction. I'm gonna, hopefully, don't let me butcher the title. It's How to Really Write Your Book and Other Forms of Self-Torture. Is that right? Okay. So you said that was the result of people reaching out to you and saying, "Hey, how do you fill in the blank?" Or, "What does it look like for you to fill in the blank?" So don't go through your chapter by chapter outline, but what are some of those big questions? Maybe some of the most common questions that you found you were answering kind of on repeat that led you to say, "Let me just put this in a book." Like, what are some of those big ones that people have asked, and maybe share some of your insights as far as like, how you answered them.
Yeah. So I think, like, I'll just read some of the title chapters. So a lot of the questions I get are about process. And you probably get a lot of these too, because I think that's the thing that we struggle with the most when we're starting is like, is there a golden key that will unlock this storytelling ability? And there's
Yeah.
not a golden
Right.
key. There is a lot of hard work, dedication, and trial and error. And so I go over a lot of those things. Like, I even break it down into how to do character development, how to do world building. And you do those things up front before you start writing so that you have a direction, you have a way that you're moving, a finish line that you're moving towards, right? So a lot of that I go over in the book. And then we get into things like, what do you do once you've finished your first draft? Because that's a whole nother hurdle that nobody talks about. You have this story, it's kind of ugly, but it's there. And how do you go from that to like publishing a book? Because there's still another 100 steps involved. And you think you're done, you finish this book, and you're like, oh, wait, there's just a whole nother mountain to climb afterwards. So I go over those steps, how to do a self edit, how to like what to expect during different editing processes if you do get picked up by a publisher. There's several different rounds of edits that you're going to go through with your book, and some of them are really harsh. So yeah, I talk about kind of how what to expect during those, and how to set your mind to being able to do what needs to be done to make your book the best possible book that it can be, and not take it personally. Because the people, whether it's your publisher, whether it's yourself, your editors, other ARC readers or early readers that you have, they're all going to have opinions that align with the general public who are also going to read your book. So just because they say something doesn't mean you have to do what they're suggesting that you do in the edit process. But there is something to be said that they're brave enough to bring it to your attention, and that you shouldn't just ignore it either. So yeah, the editing process is one I get a lot of questions about, and just like setting up your story is probably the next most asked.
Okay. Yeah. I think it's important, think about, I understand why people can be sensitive to feedback on their work, because as a writer, you put so much of your heart and soul into this thing that you're creating, right? And so
Yeah,
anything
it's
that's
very
anything
personal.
that's, for sure. And so, and not to mention the amount of time and energy and emotion that you've invested into it. So to have it critiqued, I think can sting a little. But I also think it's important. So you said, like, they're viewing it from the same perspective as the general public, the readership will as well. So that's one reason to take it to heart. But then another one that I think is super important too is to recognize that, like, those people are after the same thing. Like, they want the same goal that you want, which is to make this book as good as it can be and get it out in the world. So having, never losing sight of that perspective, I think, is also pretty helpful. Okay. So can we talk just for a minute about publishing? And because that's one of the questions that I get a lot, is like, how, what publishing route are you going to take? How do you decide between, querying agents and trying indie publishing, and oh, what about hybrid? What is that? How do you do that? Like, so for you, I'm curious, like, how did you process that, and what route did you end up taking with your books, and what were some of the factors that kind of led into that decision?
Yeah. So yeah, after I wrote those first couple books and I had those ugly first drafts, I was like, these are ready to go. I was so gung ho that these books were going to be like the next Hunger Games, right?
Right.
And that wasn't the case. So I had to learn that the hard way, though. I went into the query trenches. I decided, so okay, so let's talk about the three kinds of publishing. You've got self-publishing, hybrid publishing, and a publisher, right? So I researched the different kinds, and I thought self-publishing seemed terrifying to me because it's a business that I know nothing about, like general things about, but I don't know all the ins and outs of the publishing world, especially at the time. I was new to the entire experience. And I really felt like I wanted to have a partner with me on this journey that could take care of the things that I don't have time or interest to really dig into, because I'm more interested in writing a great story. So I that's what I decided for myself, for my initial querying that I was doing. And I I felt really confident in that decision, right? We don't know what we don't know, and it seemed like an insurmountable amount of information for me to learn in such a small amount of time. So I went into the query trenches, and I think I sent maybe 50 or 60 queries out to different agents. Some were like dream agents, some were throwaway agents, no offense. But I didn't get any hits at all, like not even a request. So I really had to take a step back and think about what my goals as a writer were and how best I thought I could reach those. And so I found a medium sized publisher who was accepting queries without an agent. And I was like, shot in the dark, send it in, see what happens. And I kind of got the best of both worlds. I have a publisher who I love, and they love me, and they really believe in my writing. And it's such a small company of people that I have direct access to everyone in the company. I can throw out ideas. I can get approvals for stuff before I even write a single word on the page. And I have those partners that I was looking for, but they feel more like friends, which is so nice.
That's great. Yeah, that sounds like the dream. That's awesome. I love it.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so you talked earlier about how when you first started writing, you just you kind of just dove in and you were pantsing your books, right? You're just going for it. Now it sounds like you have progressed and gone all the way the other side where you're pretty detailed with your outlines. Um, and I think that's pretty amazing. So a lot of people I think have expectations of like the first thing you write is going to be like you said the next Hunger Games, and usually it's not. That's not what happens. But you learn and you grow as a writer, and you find out more about yourself and about what works for you. So I'm curious. So that's one evolution, one change that has happened. Are there any other things that maybe you've learned about yourself along the way that you would say, wow, I was doing this way back then, but now I'm totally different? Or like any other things you could point to say, wow, I've really grown in this area?
I think other than streamlining my overall process of writing, one of the things that has changed the most in me over the last few years is my confidence in myself, not just with writing, but through the characters that I create in my stories. I'm able to explore all kinds of different personalities or just the things, right? Like you see people out in your everyday life and you're like, how I wonder how that person got like that or whatever. Like you get to explore that. And so through doing that, I think I'm a lot more confident in my own friendships, my own relationships, which then feeds back into the way that I write. And I think that's a tangible improvement that you have in your writing when you really let yourself explore the world around you. And I think it's really beautiful.
That's amazing. That's really cool. Thanks for sharing that. So one of the things that I always try to connect people with is resources. So think like books, podcasts, things that are helpful to someone who, again, think someone who's just starting out, or maybe they haven't even started yet, but they want to write. And so I'm curious. I mean, obviously, you created a resource that I think would be super
Right.
helpful for folks. But are
Yeah.
there any other things, any other books, podcasts, YouTube channels, anything that you find particularly helpful that you would recommend for folks?
Yeah. I think following as many other writers that you can on social media, they almost always, several times a day, you'll get these little tidbits of advice and experiences that they are going through that you can then internalize and use. So yes, follow as many other writers as you can on social media. One of the first books I ever read about writing was Save the Cat Writes a Novel. And I actually quote it in my book because I read this entire book cover to cover and understood 3% of what was in that book. So, and it's it is like one of the standard books that people say to read when you first start writing. And there was so much in that book that I didn't even have foundational knowledge to be able to understand. So when I set out to write my book, How to Really Write a Book, I use that book as an example of you can read all of these wonderful writing books, but if you don't have this foundation of knowledge to be able to stand upon with those books, they're going to not do you any good. You're wasting your time. So that's why I wrote my book, because I was like, there was little things too, like for instance, a few years ago, somebody was talking about their ARC team, and I was like, what's an ARC team? It's the advanced reader copy of the
Yeah.
book that you get. So there was just so many things, like acronyms of things and ways that the publishing industry works that I had zero idea. So I wrote my book as that foundation so that you can pick up any other writing book and have solid ground to stand on with it. So I do still recommend Save the Cat Writes a Novel, but you gotta have some foundational knowledge to be able to really dig into those kind of books. Yeah, so I would still recommend it as a good book. Follow as many writers as you can, and don't be afraid to say that you're a writer to people. There's magic in saying, I'm a writer, even if you've only written 10 words on a page, right? There's magic in that too. So that is a foundation, I think, for writing.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm big on that. So I for a long time I didn't give myself permission to say that. And I remember the first time I did say it out loud, it was a huge like milestone moment for
Yes.
me. Do you remember the first time you did that?
Yeah. And then I want to hear yours.
All right, tell me yours first.
Okay, so this was about 3 years ago. I was sitting at the ice skating rink because my kids are figure skaters, and one of the moms was like, "Oh, what do you do?" Right? Because everyone there is super richy. And I was like every other time I would have ever answered this question, I would have been like, "I'm a stay-at-home mom." And this was the first time, and I said, "I'm a writer." And I felt like this weight, like lit, like it was like an ethereal feeling, like this weight lifted off of me. And I felt like for the first time I was owning what I'd already been doing for several years at that point. So it was lovely. I recommend it to everybody.
That is, yeah, that's incredible. So mine is similar. I was not at the ice skating rink. I was at work. And this was actually during COVID. So everybody was remote and I was on a Zoom call with my team, which was like probably 20-ish people, and some of them I didn't know super well because I started this job during the pandemic. So I never met many of these people in person. But it was during a team meeting and it was kind of at the beginning of the meeting. We were doing kind of this get to know you, like everyone share a fun fact about yourself kind of thing. And so people were going around talking about, hey, my name's so and so, I've been at the company this long, and here's this interesting thing about my dog or whatever. And while they were sharing theirs, I was thinking like, when it's my turn, I should probably just tell them that I'm a writer. And I remember like having this internal argument with myself, like, well, you can't do that. Come on, you've only written a couple chapters. Like, you're not really like, they're going to ask you questions, and no, they're not going to believe you, and they might even be mad at you for how dare you say that you're. And I don't know why I thought that, but so when the moment came, I did it. I said, I shared my corporate intro, and then I said, and so, in my free time, I'm actually writing a book. I'm a writer. And I immediately could tell, because it was on a Zoom call, it was very cool to see like people's eyes lit up and like they leaned in and they asked follow-up questions. And so since that moment, I was just like, man, that was so powerful to like have that, even that affirmation of like, in not everybody, right? Some people just kind of shrugged and moved on with their day, but there were a few people who even after the meeting reached out to me and said, tell me more about your book. I like, if you need someone to read it, like I'd love to help out. And like, so immediately I'm already identifying kind of who my allies are, who my encouragers could be. And yeah, it was just a super powerful moment. And so now one of my big things on social media and folks that are following me is like, I try to tell them like, own that title, like as soon as you can. Like, you don't need to wait till you're published. You don't need to wait till you finished your draft. You don't, like you said, you've written 12 words. Congratulations, you're a writer. I even had one of my earlier podcast guests, she would even go as far as to say, like, once you've got the idea to write, you're a writer. Like, you're already one of us. It's too late. So own the title and start writing. Like, let's go. So yeah, I thought that was pretty neat. So
Yeah.
awesome.
I like how you
Well,
said that, I like how you said that there was power. There is so much power in that ownership of what you're doing. And yeah, even if it is just an idea, I guarantee we're spending a lot of brain bites on those ideas before they're
for
on the
sure.
page. So absolutely.
For sure. Yeah. Well, Sarah, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you so much for your time. I have just I have two more questions actually. So, first, most of the writers that I know were and if they're like me, always will be readers first. And so I'm curious, if does that apply to you? And if so, I'm curious if you could tell me maybe a favorite book of yours and what is it that makes that one so great?
I'll be honest, I was not a reader for a long time in my life. I felt like that was something that other people did.
Mm,
And I had two children very close together in age when I was very young. And so it was all just about keeping them alive and, doing the mom stuff. And so reading really took a back seat for me for long time. One of the first books that I picked up for pleasure reading was, I mentioned it before, the Hunger Games series. And I think that reading this book without any expectation of whether I had to like it or, I mean, this was kind of before book talk and all that, that it was just fun. And so I was like, okay, that was fun. Maybe I'll read another one. So I started picking up, my mother in law bought me some Dan Brown books. Started with Angels and Demons and worked my way through his catalog. And I was just in awe of the quality of writing. And I think that those two authors really helped inspire me to have a love for reading again. And because I always read as a child, but who does that when you're 20? I don't know.
Right. Right.
Lots of people do now, but I didn't.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that helped me have a love for books and storytelling again. I think the storytelling was the thing that I really hooked onto, creating these worlds and these characters and falling in love with the people already in your head.
Yeah. That's great. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so last question. This one is a softball. Where can people connect with you? Where can people buy your books, follow you on social media, website, blog? Give me all the links.
Okay, so my Christmas Cove series is available everywhere that you can get ebooks and physical books online. Some local stores carry them, but I don't have a list of what local stores. If you go to a local bookstore, you can request it, and they're more than likely to carry it there. My How to Really Write a Book and Other Forms of Self-Torture is only available on Amazon right now. So I'm exclusive on Amazon. I think Amazon's a great platform for all the hate that they get sometimes. They really are doing a lot for the book industry and for authors everywhere. So
For
I'm
sure.
happy to be exclusive on Amazon there. Does that answer your whole question?
How can people
Social
connect with
media.
you, the author?
Okay. So I am on every social platform almost. I'm primarily on Instagram and Threads. Those are the main ways that I like to connect with other readers and writers. I do have a blog on WordPress. It's Author Sarah Dressler at WordPress.com. You can find me on Pinterest. I don't have a TikTok, and yeah, on Facebook as well, but I mostly just cross post everything. So if you're on Instagram, you're going to see it on Facebook. But Threads is fun. I've been really having a lot of fun on Threads because I like that it's not so visual. It really is about the words, which as a
Yes.
writer, you can see why that would appeal to us. So Threads has been fun. You can immediately connect with other readers and writers with no problem, and there's great conversations happening on there every day.
Yep, for sure. I love Threads. I think Threads is the one of the things I love about it is it feels like it's much less pressure. Like you're not there to perform or to gain a following. You're just there to
Yeah,
connect. And like, yeah, I love it. So that's awesome. Cool.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much. This has been amazing. I really appreciate you giving the time, and I'm looking forward to staying connected and hearing more about the great work that you do.
You too. Thank you for having me. It's been a blast.
You got it. Thanks, Sarah. Hey, if you enjoy what you heard on this podcast, I hope you'll do me a favor and consider writing a review for the show. Your kind words mean so much to me, and ratings and reviews really help get the word out about podcasts. So whether you're listening on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or anywhere else, if you can, leave me a rating and review. Again, it means so much. If you want to connect to some more great free resources to help you overcome your mindset challenges and write your book, you can find them on my website for free. It is tcbird.com. I hope you'll check it out. I'd love to connect. Until next time, keep writing, and I'll talk to you soon. Later.